in Canada. Facebook has 24 million users. Let's bring in Stephen Sheeler, CEO of Omniscient AI and former CEO for Facebook Australia and New Zealand. Thanks for joining us tonight. Australia went through a very similar process with the social media giants a few years ago. At that time, Facebook threatened to pull Australian news content from the site. Is it the same playbook now that they're using in Canada?
Seems to be similar. 2 years ago is when this all happened in Australia. I was out of Facebook by then, so I was watching like everybody else. But what happened was the code was coming in. Facebook said, "Hey, we're gonna play hardball here," so they shut down news on Australia on the Facebook site, and that included a lot of other things caught up in the dragnet, sort of public interest things. Things that were published by the bushfire services, emergency services, even those sorts of things were getting blocked by Facebook.
Was there pushback from users, from the government?
Yeah, there was. I think for users, there was a moment of discontent. There was a lot of upset. We were in a fire season at that time. Canada's having the same sort of thing. And there were bushfires going on, and the emergency services were being affected by this. So it was seen as very irresponsible by Facebook. And of course, the politicians and the government jumped on it. But I do think what it did was it kind of forced the two parties closer together in terms of negotiating, because I think they were kind of staring each other down, and eventually they did get to a point where they came to a deal.
Wow, you think it actually brought them closer together?
I think it did. I think it pushed the government to say, well, we need to get something done here. And I think it was just a rattling of the saber by Facebook. In long term, I don't think they were ever going to really keep news off the platform. I think they were just trying to show, hey, we could cause problems for you if we really wanted to.
Okay, you have said in the past that Facebook is more powerful than any government in the world. Do you still think that is true?
Well, in some ways, I think it is. I mean, government has a lot of rights to do things. They can tax people. They can put people in jail. I mean, that's a lot of power unto itself. But social media has an insidious power that I think we're only beginning to understand the past few years, which is around how do people form opinions? How do we make decisions in our society about the big issues of the day? How do people decide who to go to when they go to the polls? Who do they vote for? And those are that's sort of upstream of government and democracy. It's how governments are even formed. So social media is sitting in that stream, and it has a very big role to play.
The argument for Meta in the case in Canada is that they don't post the news links that Canada wants them to pay for. So they're saying they shouldn't have to pay for them. What do you make of the argument itself?
Look, I don't agree that social media shouldn't have to pay for this. I think it's too much of it's a public interest issue. It's about supporting journalism. It's about supporting public interest journalism. It's about making sure we have a vibrant, free press. And whether, Facebook wants to make an argument that they should or shouldn't pay for something small, I think there should be a mechanism, and I think the bargaining code here in Australia, I think, has done pretty well, a mechanism to have these platforms, Facebook, Google, and others, be able to contribute to the vibrant ecosystem of news that we need in our countries in order to be vibrant democracies.
Okay, so how did Australia do things differently? Because they did not end up going with a pay for a link way.
No, what's happened here is the bargaining code that was brought in actually has never been activated. It was really just a background, a fallback, a kind of threat to the big tech players to say, if you don't negotiate in good faith with the major news organizations in this country and pay them for news, we will force you to do that. We will force you to the table. And so that alone has now sparked dozens of deals here in Australia amongst the big tech platforms and media organizations. And those deals are all, they're private. We don't really know what deals were struck there, but they are to the apparent satisfaction of both parties because they've struck the deals and they're keeping to them. There's criticism of that system, though, as well. One is there's some news organizations that haven't been included yet. They haven't managed to strike deals with some of the big platforms. That's one. Two, rural or small journalism, where people who are not necessarily considered journalists as recognized by the regulator aren't included in the platform, aren't included in the code. And then there's other problems just with transparency. Nobody really knows how much money is being exchanged. Nobody knows where it's going. Nobody knows if it's just going to buy a new yacht for the media executives rather than going into, fundamental journalism in this country.
All right, so no accountability. Is there any even estimate of how much some of these deals are worth?
Yeah, I've seen estimates of about 200, 300 million Australian dollars in total that's being paid per year to media organizations in Australia. That's unverified, so we're not sure what the real number is.
All right. Why do you think that Facebook now is pushing back against Canada trying to do the same thing? Is it because it's written in legislation and they don't want to have the legislation per se?
So I'm not as close to what's going on in Canada as I am here in Australia. But what I would suggest is that Facebook and the big tech guys, they don't like regulation at all. And I think they have a kind of a default position that's we're going to fight legislation, particularly if it's going to get written into a compulsory law. We're going to fight that as much as we possibly can. I think the problem for them is it becomes a bad look for them if they say, okay, we agree with this in one country, then every other country rushes in. I think what they want to do is say, no, we are going to fight this in every country in order to make it as hard as possible for this legislation, this regulation to come down upon us.
It seems like a waste of time and energy because if there's already something in place in Australia, obviously all of the other countries are going to say, we need to do the same. Why go about it this way?
Well, there's a lot of money at stake. The longer you delay it, probably the better. And, every little battle is a little victory for the big tech platforms in a much, bigger battle that they're fighting all around the world around regulation. So I think they're just in a posture where fighting against regulation is one of the key tenets of how they're going to push forward in the next few years, because they just have fights on so many fronts today.
And you think that is not going to change? That is the way Mark Zuckerberg likes to do things?
Well, some things are changing. I think they are. So just in my time, I was at Facebook. I left about 6 years ago, and I was there during the earlier days. And in those days, we didn't even know how to spell regulation. It was something we didn't even think about. And then as it started to come our way, we thought, well, that's not going to affect us. We're a tech platform. We're not a news organization. We're not a media company. But of course, now that has changed a lot. And so in some ways, the big tech companies, I think, have started to get on the train of saying, well, we recognize that we're more than just tech platforms. But I think there's things they say in public, and then the things they do in behind the scenes can be quite different. I think they want to maintain a perspective with the public that, that they're good players and good soldiers, and they're trying to keep friendly with advertisers and their users. But in the background, there's no question that they're lobbying hard, they're negotiating hard, and sometimes these things spill out into the open, as they have at this moment, as it did 2 years ago here in Australia.
Stephen, I know you said you're not necessarily in the loop with what is going on here, but how would you recommend Canada go forward on this?
Well, I don't know that I would recommend, I can recommend what Canada should do, but what I would recommend is what people should do in terms of thinking about this. And I think the big thing you should think about is, do you really want a foreign entity that is essentially controlled by one person, which is Mark Zuckerberg? And I like Mark, but I just think he has too much power. Do you really want that entity being capable of interfering with your information ecosystem in your country? I mean, if China launched a similar kind of cyber attack on Canada to try to kind of screw with Canada's information ecosystem and its ability for people to get news, that would be an international incident. But here we've got an organization that's doing that. They did it here in Australia, and that really disturbed me. And I think we should all think as citizens of these countries, if we want democracy to flourish, we want to continue to have the free press that we believe has been a pillar of our societies for hundreds of years. We need to think hard about, is Facebook an actor that is really looking after the best interests of our countries? And if not, what do we do about it?
Stephen Sheeler, good to have you on this, sir. Thank you very much for sharing your time tonight.
My pleasure.
Shortly after the announcement from Ottawa today to pull its advertising money from Meta, the Quebec government said it will do the same, saying in solidarity with the media, the decision was made to cease all government advertising on Facebook. No business is above the law. Ontario will not pull its advertising dollars. Other provinces are mulling it over.